The arrival. The darkness of space suddenly filled with metal and fire. 9,700 warships emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming under distant starlight. They formed a perfect sphere around a small blue planet called Earth. The fleet belonged to the Kryndax Empire, conquerors of 42 worlds across 3 galaxies. Their reputation preceded them like thunder before a storm. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of the command vessel Dominator, his 4 eyes scanning the primitive world below. His scales gleamed purple under the ship's lights, a sign of his noble bloodline. He had spent 2 years planning this invasion, studying every aspect of human civilization. The reports were clear. Humans were divided, weak, and technologically inferior. They still used chemical rockets and crude nuclear weapons. They had barely explored their own solar system. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. The tactical screens displayed everything the Kryndax needed to know. Earth had no unified government, no planetary defense grid, no space fleet worth mentioning. The humans spent more time fighting each other than preparing for external threats. It was pathetic. Vex estimated the entire operation would take less than a week. 3 days to break their spirit, 2 more to occupy their cities, and another 2 to establish control. Then he would move on to the next target, leaving a garrison behind to mine Earth's resources. But far below, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a different story was unfolding. General Elena Martinez sat in a command center carved from solid granite, 3 miles underground. The chamber was massive, filled with screens and computer systems that hummed with quiet power. Officers from every nation on Earth worked side by side, their uniforms representing countries that had once been enemies. Now they shared one purpose, one mission, one enemy. Elena was 60 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. She had spent 35 years in military service, rising through the ranks during humanity's most violent century. She had fought in conflicts across 5 continents. She had lost friends, soldiers, and pieces of her soul to war. But all of that had prepared her for this moment. For 15 years, she had been building Earth's true defense network in absolute secrecy. While politicians argued and nations bickered, Elena had been getting ready for the day when humanity would face a threat from beyond the stars. The screens before her showed the Kryndax fleet in perfect detail. Satellites disguised as space junk had been watching the aliens approach for 3 weeks. Every ship had been analyzed, every weapon system studied, every communication intercepted and decoded. The Kryndax thought they were dealing with primitives. They had no idea that human intelligence agencies had been preparing for extraterrestrial contact since the 1950s. They had no idea about the crashed ships that had been reverse-engineered, the alien technology that had been stolen and improved, the weapons that had been built in secret underground factories. Elena opened a secure channel that connected her to military commanders around the world. Her voice was steady and calm, carrying the weight of command that came from decades of experience. The Kryndax fleet has arrived. All units report ready status. This is not a drill. Protocol Omega is now active. Defend your positions, protect your people, make them remember Earth. Responses came back immediately from every continent. Underground bases in North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, and Australia all confirmed readiness. Submarine commanders in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans reported their vessels were in position. Fighter squadrons hidden in mountain bases signaled they were armed and prepared. Satellite weapon platforms disguised as defunct equipment confirmed their systems were online. Thousands of soldiers, pilots, and technicians who had trained for this day moved to their battle stations. On the Kryndax flagship, Admiral Vex gave his first order. The moment he had been waiting for had arrived. His voice carried absolute authority as he spoke to his fleet commanders. Begin the demonstration. Target their major population centers. Destroy 5 cities simultaneously. Show them our power. Show them that resistance is futile. Make them afraid. Across the Kryndax fleet, weapons charged with deadly energy. 500 ships focused their main cannons on 5 cities: New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and Sao Paulo. Each beam carried enough destructive force to vaporize a mountain. The targeting computers locked on. The countdown began. In 30 seconds, 15 million humans would die. In 30 seconds, Earth would know fear. The weapons fired. Brilliant beams of pure energy streaked through space toward the planet below. They moved at incredible speed, crossing thousands of kilometers in seconds. The beams entered Earth's atmosphere, burning through air molecules and creating trails of superheated plasma. They were beautiful and terrible, the ultimate expression of Krindak's military power. But the beams never reached the cities. Something stopped them, something the Krindaks had not anticipated or even imagined possible. All around Earth, hidden in orbit and disguised as space debris for 15 years, massive defense platforms suddenly activated. Energy shields burst into existence, forming a shimmering barrier that enclosed the entire planet. The technology was not human in origin. It had been recovered from a crashed alien vessel in 1964 and improved by human engineers over decades. Now it protected humanity's home. The Krindak's energy beams struck the shields and simply vanished. The destructive power was absorbed, converted, and redirected into space harmlessly. Not a single photon reached the surface. The 5 cities continued their daily routines, completely unaware that they had just been saved from annihilation. On the Dominator, alarms screamed across every console. Admiral Vex stared at his displays in disbelief, his 4 eyes wide with shock. His tactical officer's voice trembled as he reported the impossible. "Admiral, the humans have planetary shielding. Advanced planetary shielding. Our weapons had 0 effect. The energy signatures match technology that should not exist in this sector. These defenses are more sophisticated than ours." For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vex felt something he had not experienced in decades. Doubt. These were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to surrender after the first demonstration of power. They were not supposed to have technology that rivaled or exceeded Krindak's capabilities. Something was very wrong. His perfect plan was already falling apart. Deep in her command center, General Elena Martinez allowed herself a small smile. The first move had been played. The Krindaks now knew that Earth was not defenseless, but they still had no idea what was coming next. They still believed their numbers would win. They still thought humans would break under pressure. They were about to learn otherwise. Elena opened another communication channel, this time to her offensive weapons commanders. Her voice was cold and hard, carrying the promise of retribution. Weapons free. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth. Show them what humans do to invaders. All across the planet and in orbit around it, weapons that had been hidden for years came online. Railguns emerged from mountain peaks. Missile silos opened in remote deserts. Satellite platforms revealed their true purpose. Fighter craft launched from underground hangars. Humanity's secret arsenal awakened like a sleeping dragon opening its eyes. The Krindaks had come expecting conquest. They were about to get war. The awakening. The counterattack began 3 seconds after General Martinez gave the order. Humanity struck with precision and fury that shocked the Krindak's fleet. Railguns hidden in mountain ranges across 6 continents fired simultaneously. These were not ordinary weapons. They were electromagnetic accelerators that launched tungsten penetrators at 30 kilometers per second. Each projectile was a solid rod of metal weighing 2 tons. At that velocity, they hit with the force of tactical nuclear weapons. Dr. Sarah Kim had designed the targeting solution from her laboratory in Seoul. She was a physicist who had spent 12 years studying alien shield technology from recovered spacecraft. She had discovered something remarkable. All advanced energy shields operated on specific frequency ranges. They were designed to stop energy weapons and slow-moving objects, but they had a fundamental weakness. High-velocity kinetic projectiles moving at certain speeds and trajectories could pass right through them. The shields simply could not react fast enough to stop solid matter moving at such extreme velocities. The tungsten rods hit the Krindak's fleet like the hammer of an angry god. 47 ships exploded instantly, their hulls punctured and their reactors breached. The projectiles carried so much kinetic energy that they passed completely through multiple vessels, destroying 3 or 4 ships with a single shot. Debris scattered through orbital space, creating dangerous clouds of shrapnel that damaged dozens of other ships. Admiral Vex watched his fleet take casualties and felt ice form in his chest. His confidence evaporated like morning fog under a hot sun. These humans had studied Krindak's technology. They had found vulnerabilities. They had built weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. This was not the action of primitives. This was the work of sophisticated military minds who understood physics and warfare at the highest levels. He made a decision quickly. If orbital bombardment would not work, he would take the fight to the surface. The Krindaks were legendary ground fighters. Their soldiers had conquered countless worlds in face-to-face combat. He would deploy his forces to Earth's major cities and occupy them directly. Once his troops controlled the population centers, the humans would have to surrender or watch their own cities burn. 5,000 dropships launched from the fleet. Each vessel carried 200 soldiers in full combat armor. 1 million Krindak's warriors descended toward Earth's surface like a swarm of locusts. They targeted 20 major cities simultaneously: Beijing, Moscow, Cairo, Mexico City, Lagos, Sydney, Chicago, Paris, Berlin, Jakarta, and others. The plan was simple: land in the city centers, secure key locations, take hostages if necessary, and force surrender. The dropships entered the atmosphere with tremendous force, their heat shields glowing red from friction. They descended through clouds and smoke past tall buildings and busy streets. As they approached the ground, the Krindak soldiers inside prepared their weapons and checked their armor. They were ready for combat. They expected resistance. What they did not expect was what they found. The cities were empty. Completely empty. Streets that should have been filled with millions of people were silent and deserted. Buildings stood vacant. Vehicles sat abandoned. It was like landing on ghost worlds. The Krindak soldiers deployed from their ships into dead cities, and the silence was unnerving. Sergeant Marcus Chen watched from his position 2 kilometers away. He was crouched on a rooftop with his tactical team, observing the alien landing through advanced optics. Marcus was 42 years old, a veteran of special operations who had fought in conflicts across 3 continents. He had been recruited into the Planetary Defense Program 8 years ago because of his expertise in urban warfare and guerrilla tactics. Now he commanded one of 50 teams positioned around Beijing. The evacuation had taken 3 months. 12 million people moved out of the city and into underground shelters without the Krindaks detecting anything unusual. It was the largest evacuation in human history, and it had been accomplished in complete secrecy. The cities were not abandoned. They were traps. Every building had been prepared. Every street had been weaponized. The Krindaks thought they were occupying empty cities. They were actually walking into carefully designed killing zones. Marcus spoke quietly into his radio, coordinating with the other team leaders positioned throughout Beijing. All units hold position. Let them spread out. Let them get comfortable. When I give the signal, we execute the plan simultaneously. Remember your training. Remember what we are fighting for. Make every shot count. The Krindak soldiers moved through Beijing's streets with professional efficiency. They secured intersections, entered buildings, and established command posts. Everything seemed to be going according to their plan. They began to relax slightly. The absence of resistance was unusual, but perhaps the humans had simply fled in terror. Perhaps this would be easier than expected. That was when Marcus gave the signal. One word transmitted across 50 channels. Execute. The city exploded into violence. Charges buried beneath the streets detonated, creating massive craters that swallowed entire platoons of Krindak soldiers. Buildings that had been rigged with explosives collapsed on command, burying hundreds of aliens under tons of concrete and steel. Hidden machine gun nests opened fire from windows and rooftops, their bullets finding gaps in Krindak's armor with deadly accuracy. Booby traps activated throughout the city, turning streets into mazes of death. The Krindaks tried to fight back, but they could not see their enemy. Human soldiers appeared from nowhere, fired their weapons, and disappeared before the aliens could respond. They emerged from sewers and subway tunnels. They attacked from unexpected angles. They used the city itself as a weapon, leading Krindak's patrols into ambushes and traps. What should have been a simple occupation became a nightmare of urban warfare. Marcus and his team struck from their rooftop position. They were armed with weapons taken from crashed Krindak ships and modified by human engineers. The irony was bitter and satisfying. The aliens were being killed with their own technology. Marcus aimed carefully and fired. His plasma rifle burned through a Krindak soldier's helmet with lethal precision. Around him, his team eliminated an entire alien squad in seconds. Similar scenes played out in every city where the Krindaks had landed: Tokyo, Moscow, Cairo, Lagos. Everywhere the same pattern repeated: empty cities that became death traps. Human soldiers who fought like ghosts. Casualties mounting by the thousands. The Krindak's ground invasion was failing catastrophically. Above the planet, the space battle intensified. Commander Jake Thompson led a squadron of 30 fighters launched from a hidden base in the Andes Mountains. Jake was 35 years old, a pilot with reflexes enhanced by neural implants that connected his brain directly to his aircraft systems. He could think and his fighter would respond instantly. No delay, no hesitation. He was not the only pilot with such enhancements. Earth had 200 fighters with similarly enhanced pilots, and they were devastating. Jake's squadron targeted damaged Krindak's vessels, finishing off ships that had been crippled by railgun strikes. His fighter was small and fast, armed with fusion warheads specifically designed for space combat. He flew through defensive fire that should have killed him a dozen times, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to predict and evade every shot. He locked onto a Krindak's cruiser that was venting atmosphere and had lost its shields. His targeting computer confirmed the lock. Jake armed his warhead and spoke calmly into his radio. "Phoenix Flight, I have target lock on the cruiser. Following me in. Stay tight. Watch your spacing. Remember, speed is life." His fighter accelerated toward the massive alien ship. Point defense systems tried to track him, but he was too fast and too unpredictable. He released his warhead at optimal range and broke away hard, his fighter screaming with the strain. Behind him, the fusion device struck the cruiser and detonated. Nuclear fire consumed the vessel, tearing it apart from within. One more enemy ship destroyed. Dr. Sarah Kim continued her work in Seoul, analyzing data from the battle and searching for more vulnerabilities. She had teams working around the clock, studying every piece of Krindak's technology they could recover. And then she found something extraordinary, something that could change everything. The Krindak's fleet operated on a networked communication system. Every ship was connected through quantum entanglement channels. They shared tactical data, sensor information, and targeting solutions in real time. It was an incredibly sophisticated system that gave them tremendous coordination advantages. But Sarah realized it had one critical flaw. The entire network depended on the flagship. Admiral Vex's command ship was the central hub. If it went offline, the entire fleet would lose coordination. 9,000 ships would suddenly become 9,000 individual vessels, unable to work together effectively. Sarah opened an emergency channel to General Martinez. Her voice was shaking with excitement and exhaustion. "General, I have found their weakness. Their entire fleet coordination runs through the flagship. If we can disable it, we can cripple their ability to fight as a unified force. They will be blind and confused. We can finish them." General Martinez understood immediately. This was the opportunity they needed. But attacking the flagship would be incredibly dangerous. It was surrounded by 500 escort vessels and protected by the strongest shields in the Krindak's fleet. Getting close enough to disable it would require a sacrifice. Someone would have to fly a suicide mission. She made the call to Commander Jake Thompson. His squadron was the best they had. If anyone could do the impossible, it was them. The reckoning Commander Jake Thompson received the mission briefing, while his fighter was refueling at an orbital station. He listened carefully as General Martinez explained what needed to be done. Dr. Kim had designed a specialized electromagnetic pulse weapon tuned specifically to Krindak's quantum communication frequencies. One detonation near the flagship would cascade through their entire network, disabling 9,000 ships simultaneously. But someone had to deliver it. Someone had to get through 500 escort vessels and the flagship's defenses. Someone who knew they would not return. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the Krindak's formation. The flagship sat in the center, protected by layers of warships. It was a fortress. Approaching it would be like flying into the heart of a star. His chances of survival were essentially zero. He thought about his family back on Earth, safe in their shelter. He thought about his daughter, only 7 years old, who drew pictures of spaceships and dreamed of flying among the stars. He thought about the billions of people depending on him. His decision took less than 5 seconds. He accepted the mission without hesitation. This was what he had trained for. This was why he had volunteered for the enhancement program, why he had pushed his body and mind beyond human limits. This was his purpose. He spoke clearly into the communication channel. General Martinez, Phoenix Squadron accepts the mission. We will deliver the weapon. We will not fail. Tell my family I died protecting them. Tell them I died proud. Jake called his squadron together. 29 other pilots gathered around him in the briefing room. He explained the mission honestly, holding nothing back. This would be a one-way trip. They would all die. But their deaths would save Earth. Their sacrifice would give humanity a chance to survive. He gave them the option to refuse. No shame, no judgment. This was beyond the call of duty. Not a single pilot refused. Every one of them volunteered. They knew what they were fighting for. They knew who they were protecting. They were willing to pay the ultimate price. Jake felt pride swell in his chest. These were the best humans Earth had produced. Warriors, heroes, and friends. The 30 fighters launched from the orbital station carrying Dr. Kim's experimental weapons. Each pulse device was untested except in computer simulations. They had to work. There would be no second chance. The squadron formed up and accelerated toward the Krindak's flagship formation. They flew in perfect coordination, each pilot trusting the others completely. The Krindaks detected them immediately. Alarms sounded across the fleet. 500 escort ships moved to intercept. Energy weapons charged. Point defense systems activated. The aliens knew this was an attack, though they did not understand its true purpose. They prepared to destroy the human fighters like they had destroyed so many others. The first fighter died within seconds of entering weapons range. A direct hit from a particle beam simply erased it from existence. Then another fighter exploded. And another. The defensive fire was overwhelming, like flying through a storm of lightning. But the squadron pressed forward. They had to reach the flagship. They had to complete the mission. Jake flew with every bit of skill and enhancement he possessed. His neural implants processed information faster than any computer. He saw enemy fire before it happened, predicted trajectories before they formed. His fighter moved like it was part of his body, responding to his thoughts instantly. He dodged, rolled, dived, and climbed through the defensive fire. Around him, his squadron died. One by one, his friends and comrades were destroyed. But they bought him time. They drew fire away. They gave him a path. With 10 fighters left, Jake gave his final order. His voice was calm despite the chaos around him. Phoenix Squadron, scatter and attack. Draw them away from me, I will finish this. It has been the greatest honor of my life flying with you. Tell Earth we did our duty. Tell them we died well. The remaining fighters broke formation. They scattered in different directions, firing at escort ships and forcing the Krindaks to divide their attention. They created chaos in the defensive perimeter, and they died. Every single one of them died, buying Jake precious seconds. Jake flew alone toward the flagship. His fighter was damaged, systems failing, shields nearly gone. Warning alarms screamed in his cockpit. He ignored them all. He focused on one thing: the massive alien command ship growing larger in his view. He was close now. So close. 500 meters. 400. 300. He armed the electromagnetic pulse weapon. The device Dr. Kim had built hummed with power, ready to unleash its devastating payload. Jake thought one final time about Earth, about his daughter, about everything he loved. He spoke his last words aloud, knowing they were being recorded. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who looks up at the stars and dreams. This is Commander Jake Thompson. Mission accomplished. He triggered the weapon and detonated it manually. The electromagnetic pulse expanded at the speed of light, invisible but absolutely devastating to electronic systems. It struck the flagship first, and every system on the massive vessel failed instantly. Navigation, weapons, shields, life support, everything went dark. Then the pulse spread through the quantum network like wildfire through dry grass. Ship after ship lost power. 9,000 Krindak's vessels suddenly floated helpless in space. On the flagship, Admiral Vex watched his bridge go completely dark. Emergency lights flickered weakly. He heard his crew shouting in panic. He realized with horrible clarity what had happened. The humans had figured out their communication system. They had built a weapon to destroy it, and they had sacrificed themselves to deliver it. These primitives had outsmarted him, outfought him, and now they had crippled his entire fleet. General Martinez saw the opportunity and seized it instantly. Every weapon Earth had remaining fired simultaneously. Railguns, missiles, energy weapons, everything. The disabled Krindak's fleet had no defenses, no shields, no evasive maneuvers, no coordinated response. They simply floated in space and died. Ships exploded by the hundreds, then by the thousands. The orbital space around Earth became a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. The battle lasted 6 more hours. 6 hours of systematic destruction. When the firing finally stopped, General Martinez counted the surviving enemy vessels. 17 ships. Out of 9,700, only 17 remained functional. The rest were debris. The Krindak's invasion was over. On the ground, the surviving alien soldiers surrendered. They had lost contact with their fleet and were surrounded by human forces. Marcus Chen and his teams accepted their surrender and took them as prisoners. The cities had been destroyed in the fighting, but they could be rebuilt. The people were safe. Earth had survived. Emergency power returned to the Krindak's flagship 20 minutes after the pulse. Admiral Vex sat in his damaged command chair and faced the communication screen. General Martinez appeared before him. Behind her stood the survivors of Earth's command staff. They looked exhausted but victorious. Martinez spoke with calm authority. Admiral Vex, you came to our world expecting easy conquest. You thought we were primitive. You thought we were weak. You were wrong. Humans have been perfecting warfare for 10,000 years. We know how to fight. We know how to sacrifice. And we never surrender our home. You have 17 ships remaining. I am allowing you to leave. Return to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them about the price of trying to conquer Earth. Vex had nothing to say. The evidence of his defeat surrounded him. His fleet was destroyed. His soldiers were captured or dead. The humans had beaten him completely. He gave the order to retreat. The 17 surviving ships limped away from Earth, carrying their message of defeat. As the Krindaks disappeared into hyperspace, General Martinez allowed herself to feel the weight of what they had accomplished. Earth had won, but the cost was terrible. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers dead, entire cities in ruins. Commander Jake Thompson and his squadron had sacrificed everything. But humanity had survived, and more importantly, humanity had sent a message to the galaxy. Earth was not defenseless. Earth would fight, and Earth would win. Dr. Sarah Kim began working on new defenses immediately. The Krindaks would not be the last threat. Other aliens would eventually come. But now humanity knew they could stand against the darkness. They could protect their home. They were no longer alone and afraid. They were warriors. They were survivors. They were human, the message 6 months. After the battle, Earth had changed in ways both visible and invisible. The ruined cities were being rebuilt with new technologies adapted from captured Krindak's equipment. Buildings rose faster and stronger than before. But the deeper changes were in humanity itself. General Elena Martinez stood in the rebuilt command center, now expanded and improved. She was no longer just Earth's military commander. The United Nations had appointed her as the first director of planetary defense, a position that gave her authority over all military forces worldwide. The nations had finally learned what cooperation could achieve. Dr. Sarah Kim worked in a massive research facility constructed beneath Geneva. She led a team of 3,000 scientists from 60 countries, all studying alien technology and developing new defenses. Her work had made her the most important scientist on Earth. But she remained humble, remembering the sacrifices that had made victory possible. Sergeant Marcus Chen trained the next generation of soldiers in urban warfare tactics. His experience fighting the Krindaks had become required study for every military academy on the planet. He taught young warriors that courage and intelligence could defeat superior technology. He made sure they understood the cost of freedom. Commander Jake Thompson's name was carved into a memorial wall in Washington, along with the names of his squadron and the 43,000 other soldiers who had died defending Earth. His daughter visited the memorial every week, placing flowers beneath her father's name. She had decided to become a pilot like him. She wanted to protect Earth like he had. The 17 Kryndak ships that escaped had indeed delivered Earth's message to their empire. The news spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. Humanity had defeated a force 10 times larger. Primitives had destroyed an advanced fleet. The impossible had happened. Other alien civilizations took notice. Some saw Earth as a threat to be eliminated before humans became more dangerous. Others saw potential allies, warriors worth respecting. Trade delegations began approaching Earth carefully, offering technology and knowledge in exchange for peace. Humanity had earned a place at the galactic table, paid for in blood and courage. Admiral Vex had been executed by his own empire for his failure. But before he died, he wrote a report that became required reading in Kryndak's military academies. He warned future commanders never to underestimate humans, never to assume technology alone would guarantee victory, never to forget that desperate beings defending their home would fight with unimaginable ferocity. Earth built a space fleet of its own, combining human ingenuity with reverse-engineered alien technology. Within a year, humanity had 50 warships patrolling the solar system. Within 5 years, they would have 500. Earth would never be defenseless again. General Martinez looked at the stars through the command center's viewing window. She knew more threats would come. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but she also knew that humanity would face those threats together. United by the memory of the day they stood against impossible odds and won. She whispered words that had become Earth's new motto, words spoken by Jake Thompson in his final moments. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who dreams. The silent guardians were watching, and they would never stop.